What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one-armed madman. And with me today, we've got Joe from Kind Idaho. I didn't ask your last name, so we're going with Joe.
It's Evans.
Joe
Yeah.
Evans, perfect. We got Joe Evans.
Yeah, perfect.
So I told you earlier, I've admired your organization from afar because you're doing the Lord's work here. And I figured it was time to talk to somebody and find out how the fight's going.
Well, the fight's going. You got the community. There's certain things that the community wants to happen. And as a result, there's certain things that don't happen because the community can't get behind certain aspects of things. Especially when you're looking at Idaho. We have things that we consider important to our rights, important to our privacy, and a lot of the things that have succeeded in other states, such as the medical program, succeeded simply because a lot of the people who want to be able to smoke are comfortable giving up certain rights. But in Idaho, they aren't. And it makes it really difficult to go with an awful lot of the patterns that have been accepted in other states, such as a medical program that requires you to register with the Department of Health and Welfare in order to get your card. Reason-wise, because that puts you on a list.
Yep.
It puts you on probably one of the most dangerous lists in the United States, because this is an organization that is responsible, that has power over your relationship with your children. It has power over your relationship with your medical providers. It has power over so many different aspects of your life. Whether or not you receive state benefits from the state, under certain conditions, whether unemployment or medical disability, or as a foster, or, which if you got a medical card, you're not going to be a foster.
Yeah.
Even when it comes to family relationships, these are things, then you take a look at what the feds have decided to do. Even if you go in and set up the clause that, you can't use somebody's marijuana card to justify removal of their firearms from their presence, from their residence. Yeah, you may say that in the state law, but the feds do what the feds want to do. So we start taking a look at that and realizing, what, in addition to the fact that this just being a wall of text, it's 7 pages on legal paper, with your 12, point font, and it's just onerous to read. It's difficult. It's long, and even if you sit down and talk with volunteers, and express the different points, the ability of a volunteer to remember all the points on all 14 pages of that fine font about which diseases, which conditions, which disorders you're allowed to use medical marijuana for, what conditions, who's in charge of certifying the growers, who's in charge of certifying the distributors, who's in charge of certifying the individual who qualifies you for your medical card. All of this goes into it. And how do you answer all of those questions, in a meaningful way? And we basically figured out that because of the involvement, because of the rights violations, your right to privacy, you're getting something for medical reasons, yet you aren't allowed HIPAA privacy. You're not allowed to not put your name in a state registry. You're not allowed to just have this use between you and your physician. And we said, what? We've tried medical, we've tried certain other things. We've tried setting up a recreational through different organizations over the years. We just said, what? Let's just put in an exception to decriminalize personal use.
Yeah, I'd be happy with that. My God, that would
Right?
make such a... And Yeah, man, we live in such a great state, but it's like you said, it's just there's this balancing act going on between like which rights you are willing to, give up to, maybe grab a couple more. I'm a libertarian, so I don't have any stake in how either party goes. Like I like to argue with both of them. And I feel like the best way to typically like get through to the right wing around here is to attack them from their own positions. Like, hey, look, all throughout COVID, you guys were screaming my body, my choice. But what happens now that COVID's over? It's no longer that anymore. I remember during COVID, I was watching this. I used to watch Tucker Carlson once a week because I like to see what the right half of America was seeing. And, he brought on some token liberal to say, oh, yeah, vaccines are my body, my choice. This is crazy, blah, blah, blah. And literally the next segment wasn't even a commercial in between, was how evil is marijuana? How do we get rid of it? And it's just like, come on, guys. Like, we have to have some principles here. If you're going to stand on, bodily autonomy as one of your principles, you have to be able to apply that to everything, not just the laws
Oh yeah,
that you like.
absolutely. And when you start taking a look at it, it's not just an issue of cannabis. It's an issue of what other plants are you're
Mm-hmm.
able to use. Got a friend who wants to see ibogaine, for recovery, decriminalized. Create opportunities for other things as well that we continue to see not being properly utilized medicinally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, pain medications. We got opiates. Opiates plant based. It's natural based. Why are we paying out the you know fourth point of contact? For somebody's you know for a limited distribution for something that somebody has a monopoly on.
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we paying pharmaceutical companies this extreme amount of money for something that can literally be grown in our backyard? And for pain management, we've understood that cannabis, THC, is better for our pain management programs than opioids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so why are we continuing to insist on using opioids for things that we know we have better options for? Why can't we grow what we need? Why do we have to continue to depend upon, pharmaceuticals? Why do we have to continue to depend upon state regulations? Why do we have to continue to depend on organizations that serve practically no other purpose than to exploit us, for our health care, for our medicine, especially in Idaho?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about cottage industry, the ability to, take care of yourself, grow your own garden. Farmers' rights in the state of Idaho. Idaho recognizes the right of the farmer to farm. We can grow whatever we want, wherever we want, why ever we want, except cannabis.
Yep.
Why is that the case? Why not go ahead and decriminalize, at least from a self-care perspective?
Right. Yeah.
Give us the option.
I've been a casualty of the war on drugs my entire adult life. Like, it started with marijuana. I'm from Northern California, so, a lot of my friends lost their livelihoods, lost their families. Some of them are still in jail today, and I've got other family who was on the arresting end of that, who are retired comfortably here in Idaho, and it's just a disgusting thing. When I got hurt, I got electrocuted working on power lines in North Dakota. And one of the first thoughts that I had, like post burn unit and stuff like that, it was like, well, at least I'm not going to have to deal with problems with opioids again. Like, at least it'll be easy now. Wrong. Being hurt in Idaho is a job. You've got to go through different doctors, and it's just been a nightmare, a complete nightmare. And I'm starting to see it turn in an opposite direction a little bit. That could just be because of the doctor that I'm seeing. But they put me on ketamine about a year ago. And I was on ketamine when I was in the burn unit, and it was not a fun experience. It was really horrible. So I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, it was a bad experience for me, and you know, I I I guess I'll try it, but I had no high expectations for it, and man, it has changed my life in such a meaningful way. I can't even express it. I took it originally for pain. They said, here, take it at night. It's going to help your pain. And it did immediately. The pain was great. And then a couple months down the line, I'm talking to my mom about something. And I'm like, I kind of feel like I've felt better since I've started taking this stuff. Like, not,
Right.
nothing, but just like a little bit better. And she was like, oh, yeah, I completely notice it. And she doesn't tell me these things because, you don't want to get into someone's head about a medication or something like that. But just
Oh
an
yeah.
incredible, change in my life, which is, measurable for someone like me.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, you don't want to create the bias. You don't want to create that idea that a drug is bad or a medicine is bad. And that's one of the problems that we keep going back and forth on. What is a drug? What is medicine? Why is it the pharmaceuticals are considered medicine, but our plants are considered drugs? I got a friend who's extremely religious. He goes on and on about, the religious properties of cannabis, and talking about, well, God gave us every seed bearing herb, of the planet for our sustenance, for our care. Why is it we've criminalized God's gift to the world?
Yeah.
When up until the 1850s, THC and cannabis and even opiates were the part of every medicine that was provided to us here in the U.S. We saw it in pain relief. We saw it in stabilization, even for anxiety. Over 100 different treatments, that we created using cannabis-based medication, whether it was for the THC that was in it or whether there was some other quality that was integrated into it. And then we start getting into the whole complication. One of the great things about the way we are going with a decriminalization for personal use, especially as it applies to right to try, is the ability that an individual can cultivate that variation of cannabis that works best for them. Okay. Whether it's the sativa, whether it's the indica, whether it's the combination of terpenes that works best, the way it integrates into and works with the psychology, relieving the stress or creating focus, depending upon what it is you need out of that medicine, what you need from a perspective of your immunosystem. How is it you are best able to heal yourself using this as medicine? And we don't turn it over to corporate America to create some all-purpose cheap weed to take care of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're allowed to grow the medicine that works for us, that heals our issues. And that goes back to why we've chosen this particular route back around to creating healing opportunities for the people in Idaho. Being able to teach people the means to grow their own medicine and create those opportunities. And the great thing about that is it takes it out of corporate America's hands. They can't sell it here. They can't grow it here. They can't mandate a monopoly.
That's what they want. That's where I was going.
Yeah.
They want a mandated monopoly for sure.
They want a mandated monopoly. And the way we're going, they can't do that because we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for personal use and home cultivation in the state of Idaho. And we've granted an exemption for person that allows the individual to grow and use what's best for them as an individual, rather than corporate monopolies on cheap, sloppy products.
And now we have things like YouTube where you can go on and learn. When I was growing up in Northern
Oh, yeah.
California, you couldn't get a recipe from somebody if you tortured them. Like they're taking their recipe to the grave, essentially. And now you
Mm-hmm.
can just go on and learn and get some
Right.
top guys, top recipe. All you do is buy and do it exactly. It's impossible to stop something like that. Sure, you could say, oh, YouTube, you're not allowed to post that kind of stuff. YouTube may or may not agree with that. You could even say, hey, you know, you can't use a VPN anymore. But that is just going so far down the road to totalitarianism that I'm not sure that even, you know, the most totalitarian in our system is willing to do something like that. I've been wrong before, and I hope I'm not on this one, but
Right. I hope you're not wrong on this one either. But agreed, this is one of those things. You can go on YouTube and you can talk. You can find, you know, that channel that shows you how to mature, grow, and harvest northern lights. And then find another channel that teaches you how to turn it into an edible.
it's incredible.
You know, you pick your best medicine. You pick the way that you want to take it. You know, you find that combination, that blend. You know, you want to make your edibles. You like a little bit more vanilla in Northern Lights edible, or a little more orange in your Dreamscape. You know, a little more purple in your Grape Ape.
Yeah. And you know
These
what's
are up.
And you know what's super frustrating to me is like I'm a snob when it comes to weed. Like I grew up in Northern California, so I know how it's supposed to look, how it's supposed to like those type of things. And people that I know around here that smoke, like they show me the stuff they have, and I'm like, oh my God, what are you doing to yourself? Like, don't put that in your lungs. I had a guy a couple months ago, we were at a concert, and he's like, oh, you want to smoke this stuff with me? I'm like, I don't know, you know, maybe. Let me see it. And he goes, look, there's crystals falling off of it. I'm like, dude, that's not crystals, that's mold. Throw that crap away. You know, and like you're saying, it's this ridiculous monopolization of something that we should all be able to put in our gardens, to where, you know, they can step down the product. And these guys are paying top dollar for this just absolute garbage. It's not good for you. And that's
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of the game.
You know, that's what happens when you turn it over to corporate America. You know, one of my favorite, you know, YouTube speeches is by Malcolm. God, I can't even remember what his last name is, but he's talking about spaghetti sauce. Okay, now of all the things to go and compare, you know, the different strains of marijuana and cannabis to spaghetti sauce, but corporate America went through this huge testing phase where they wanted to find out what that one type of spaghetti sauce was that was the end all be all for spaghetti sauce, you know, the one brand to rule them all. So they went and did taste test after taste test after taste test. And what they ended up finding out was there was no such thing as one brand to rule them all.
It's subjective.
You know, there were, yeah, it's subjective. It was 100 different favorite combinations. You know, was it the chunky? Did it have the meat sauce? Was it more garlic? You know, what was it? Which is why when you walk down the pasta aisle these days, you see 50 different styles in 5 different brands of spaghetti sauce, and they all sell. It's because people are unique. The things they love, the things they want, they are unique. And if we turn our medicine, if we turn our health over to corporate America, which we've already done.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, corporate America owns our health. You know, 30% of every publicly traded health industry in the United States is owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Our health is owned by corporate America, and it's planned on a 90-day profit cycle. If we turn over our health, our medicine to corporate America on a 90-day planning cycle for maximum profit, what are we going to get back? Obesity. It's an issue here in the United States.
Yeah.
And it's because we turned our health over to corporate America. We turned it over to the FDA and the USDA. Okay, we're fat because we trusted them 30 years ago, 40 years ago when they built the food pyramid. And here we are, we're in a situation where we can control our medicine, where it's our body, our choice, our medicine. And we got people trying to convince us to trust the people who made America fat.
So I have a beautiful garden in my house. It started out as one kind of garden, and then the cops came, and it ended up being a different kind of garden. But I love strawberries. I've always loved strawberries, and I started growing strawberries a couple years ago, and I'm like, man, these things are fucking dynamite, just incredible. And I start buying them at the store in the wintertime, and I'm like, these taste like water. Like, what is going on here with these strawberries? So I did a little research into it, and it turns out that all of our strawberries are picked green. And then they shove them into a warehouse and pump chemicals into them to turn them red. So you're not really eating a ripe strawberry. You're eating some Frankenberry that they're able to transport around the country for, 3 weeks, and the things are still going to be fine. Like, I see that happening in the marijuana field, in, healthcare, and like being an amputee and having to go through it with the healthcare system. Like, the thought of government monopoly over healthcare is just terrifying. These normal lefties who think, oh, let's just, have the government take over it. It's like, oh my God, it's not a good plan. I know people who live in Europe who are racers. I don't know them personally, but I watch, races. I'm a dirt bike racer, so I like to watch it. If you tear your ACL at a dirt bike race in, Europe, you're flying to California to have the knee surgery a couple days later, because that's the only way you're going to be back in the races anytime soon. If you're waiting on DHS or whatever you're going to be waiting 3 months and walking around on a torn ACL. And, I had to battle so hard to get a prosthetic hand. I'm the first workers' comp case in North Dakota history where they gave me a prosthetic hand, and I had to fight for it like crazy. My case was so difficult for them because they're a small office in North Dakota that they outsourced me to a different corporation. Here, we'll have this corporate thing. They'll have a nurse. They'll watch you. They'll just give us updates. Unfortunately for them, they decided that I needed a prosthetic hand, and I got one. But man, if they have their way, it's hooks for everyone. Hooks for all. Oh, you lost your hand? Great. We've got this great hook over here. It's the same one that we had for 40 years, but it works great.
Right? Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm hoping that this idea of decriminalization, the idea of creating an opportunity for hobby pharmaceuticals, for your hobby tenders, to actually come around and create an opportunity from a hobbyist perspective for a mutual aid, mutual support, something that starts to take our lives back from corporate America. Because like you said, you got your garden. Your garden's so much better than what you're going down to the produce department at Albertsons or Winco and picking up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's fresh. You know what went into it. You know the dirt it grew in. You know what got sprayed on it. Okay? Same thing with your medicine. Once we start working with that on the medicine and start teaching people that, the seed-bearing herbs of the planet Earth are supposed to be personally tended to. Stop trusting other people to take care of the things that sustain and heal you. These people should be part of your network. They should be part of your community.
Absolutely.
These are people that you trust with your life. because it's the food you eat, it's the medicine that heals you. Why are you turning it over to a stranger whose primary interest is the 90-day profit cycle? Why are we doing that to ourselves?
Because it's financially viable for the people in charge is the direction I would go on that one.
Well, but that's it. Is who should be in charge of your life? Who should be in charge of your health? The people who made you fat 40 years ago?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
So what's the major holdups, hangups for decriminalization / medical here in Idaho?
Well, one of the big problems with medical is, of course, it's the size and scope of trying to create a program. Okay, you want to create a medical program here in the state of Idaho. Department of Health and Welfare needs to get involved. You need to come up with money to pay the Department of Health and Welfare to set up the program, run the program, manage the program, tax the marijuana to pay for the program that they're managing. And it just starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
And it creates just a huge issue. Above and beyond the issues that you're talking about with privacy and personal security. You know, the fact that once you grab your medical card, you lose the ability to protect yourself. You know, these are things, these are concerns. These are things we need to watch out for. And then second is the nature of the community. You know, people don't want to give up they don't want to trade their ability, you know, to smoke to get a medical card when they can still just go across the border and pick up stuff they want recreationally. You know, do they use it before they drive back home, or do they try and drive back home before they use it without getting caught? You know, and which is truly the sound judgment when they make that choice? You know, because the ability to enjoy it in your own home is a risk. You know,
Yeah.
enjoying it before you drive home 60 miles is a risk.
And a test cannot differentiate whether you smoked it in Oregon or Idaho or yesterday. It's just,
or a month ago.
Yeah, it's just a test, you know, pass or
Yeah.
fail. And it's always fail with them.
Right? It's always going to be failed because it can't differentiate the time frame or your current state of mind, you know, because of how recent or how long ago you used it. You know, so take the time, decriminalize, take a slow drive home, relax, because you're not worried about getting arrested because you didn't buy enough to get arrested over. You don't have enough for the police to justify your taking your car and taking your license. You know, you don't have enough to justify civil asset forfeiture. You got your personal amount that you picked up across the border and that you're driving home with. You know, you have a little that you brought with you because you're headed to a party from your home grow. You know, a party you're going to go stay the night at because you're not going to drive back home under the influence. You know, but you want to be able to be comfortable having the medicine you need at any place, at any time in the state of Idaho. Whereas, again, your big question was getting back to what is the roadblock here in the state of Idaho? Part of it's been the community. Okay. How do you get the people to support something that they're not 100% behind? You know, one of the problems we have here in Idaho right now, and I've run into this on our page. Okay, 60% of the state of Idaho is going to vote for Trump. Okay.
Maybe more.
We got people, maybe more. I'm going with 60%.
Yeah, that's a good number.
You know, 30% are going to vote for Harris, just because that still leaves 10% in this weird zone of whether they're going to vote for the libertarian candidate Chase Oliver,
Yeah.
Chase
There you
Oliver.
go. There you go. I
Uh,
like Chase.
for the Green, Jill Stein, she's on the ballot. We even got our Party of Socialization and Liberation candidate, De La Cruz. She's on the ballot here. Cornell West. No, Cornell didn't make it.
I think
We still got Bobby.
Kennedy's going to
We
be
still
on all the
got Bobby
ballots
on
still,
the
it
list.
sounds like, because of all the lawfare that's going on with that.
Yeah.
But he's
No,
great.
Bobby,
I mean, he's great.
yeah.
He's the best.
You
I
know,
mean, as far as I'm concerned, like I'm not, I think he would probably do some things with climate change that I wouldn't be happy of, but like, go for it. I don't care. Like if you're going to do the health thing, nobody
right.
better to have in charge of health in America than Bobby Kennedy right now. I mean, it's just I was listening to Joe Rogan the other day, and he was talking about Bobby, and he goes, "Why is this the biggest story on every news station that America's so sick?" And it's like, dude, it's because the news stations are owned by the pharmaceutical companies, and they can't run stories on their, main providers.
Well, no, it's not that. How much of corporate America owns our news agencies?
It's all owned by them.
Okay, that same corporate America that owns the news agencies owns the pharmaceutical companies. Okay, when you realize that everybody owns everybody, the pharmaceutical companies want the news companies to do well. The news companies want the pharmaceutical companies to do well because they own each other. And when each other does well, they gain financially. So much of America's wealth is tied up in corporations owning each other. How much of Bayer Monsanto does NBC own? How much of NBC does Bayer Monsanto own? And that's not even taking into consideration how much of each of them is owned directly through the hedge fund management of BlackRock.
Yeah.
It's corporate America has to support corporate America on every front. Because if corporate America doesn't support corporate America doesn't do well. But who gets left out? You and me.
Absolutely.
Because we aren't the same type of people corporations are.
No, that's for damn sure, right? So about the community. So I'm from Northern California. I moved here in 2015 after I blew myself up and lost my hand and kind of got pushed out of the state that I grew up in. You can't really afford to live there on disability. I have noticed the community has changed a lot since I've moved here. When I originally moved here, my friends were like, "Why are you moving to Idaho? There's nothing there. Like you're going up to nowhere." And now a lot of those people have moved here. And when I graduated high school, I moved to a town in Southern California called Temecula, which was a dirt bike racing town. That's all it really was. A bunch of rich people from Orange County got fed up with the taxes, sold all their shit, moved to Temecula, and then bought dirt bikes and motorhomes and all kinds of toys. And that was kind of that was kind of like the soul of that area. It was around dirt bikes and stuff like that. When I moved here, I started going to concerts, and it was different than California. It was very different. Now, I tend to have a little bit more of that Southern California feel when I go out to a concert. I recognize a lot of people with that Southern California look. You can always tell the black straight-billed hat, and we stand out a lot of the times. Do you think that's, is that a good thing for Idaho or a bad thing? And if it's a bad thing, I guess that's a poor way. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? And is that going to lead us into a better direction through legalization and medical?
Okay, now you're talking politics and community and what it actually means in a lot of aspects. Now, I've spent my fair share of time as a libertarian candidate, running initiatives, and talking about a lot of these different things to different people. And one of the things that an awful lot of people really don't understand when they come to Idaho and try and start screwing with politics is that an Idaho Democrat is more conservative than a California Republican.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Okay. I mean, they're more conservative. They want a slower process. They want to make sure that the regulations are tried and true and that they've been tested out, or they want to make small, gradual changes rather than, rabid changes. And that's one of the things that we've run into problems with here in the state of Idaho with regard to Republican political refugees from other states. Okay? They're not interested in a conservative approach. What they want to do is they want to go back to a time that never ever existed.
Yeah.
And they're not conservative in their approach. They're not making little changes. They're making radical changes. They're making radical, regressive changes in a conservative state. And that's problematic for a number of different reasons. Now where it comes to marijuana, cannabis has been criminalized in the state. It was one of the first places to be criminalized. We criminalized it in Idaho because some mayor of Boise, in 1880 was upset that the field hands were coming into town chawing on cannabis stock and hooking up with the local white ladies. The racism in cannabis criminalization goes clear back to the beginnings of the frigging state. But here we are, we're trying to change that because we recognize its value as medicine. We recognize its value as a community ritual. We recognize the things that it brings to the community and the healing that it helps facilitate in a lot of ways. And by starting with a personal use, this is something that is 80% supported across the state. It's a gradual increase. We're not bringing in the industry. We're not bringing in, the bodegas or the dispensaries, or the party centers. We're saying here, learn to use it responsibly. Take care of yourself. Work with your doctors. Work with your physicians. Learn how to handle what's coming. Do it gradually, integrate it into the system. Integrate it into your system, integrate it into your life so that when it does and it's going to be commercialized, sooner or later, Idaho's going to want to tax it. Idaho's going to want to, I honestly hope it never goes there. I prefer cannabis never be taxed in the state of Idaho. But there are going to be people who want to see it happen. And eventually, somebody's going to make it happen. But be able to create the situation so that, one, we don't give up our right to grow our own medicine in the process of corporate America coming in and trying to take over the plant. We don't want to see, the regulations around marijuana that we see around tobacco, or alcohol. We want this to be something hobbyists can continue to enjoy, much like your microbrewers.
Yeah.
We got microbrewers. We want to be able to do micro grows. We want to allow hobbyists to be hobbyists. We want them to be able to take care of and do the things that they want to do. And if it eventually reaches that point, maybe even let them turn it into a cottage industry. Not massive sales, not high profit sales, not like $1 million a year sales, but like, let somebody make a comfortable living.
Yeah. My neighbor raised cattle for years, and he can't sell cattle to me across the street.
No.
And
no, you can't.
It seems like some law like that would probably get baked in if people weren't smart about it. So it's good to hear that, like, you really know your shit, which is very, very cool for me to hear. Because, like, I'm confident that, like, you guys are really working on this shit. Another question I wanted to ask was about cops. So when the cops came over here and relieved me of my garden during COVID, I had a pretty decent conversation with the detective that was running the raid. When he showed up, he thought I was he was told by my neighbor that I was a drug dealer, which was a complete lie. So, he's looking for weed. He's looking for all kinds of shit that just doesn't exist.
Right.
He asked me at one time, "Where are all your baggies?" I'm like, dude, does it look like I operate baggies all the time? Like, come on, I'm not doing baggies. But the interesting part, after they left, they didn't take me to jail because of COVID. I asked the guy, I was like, look, man, is this really how like you thought you were going to spend your career? Was coming and knocking heads on some amputee who's just trying to like get an extra couple hours of sleep a night? And he was like, honestly, no, I'm not a fan of any of this stuff. And I wonder if that is the attitude to most police in this area. I talked to another cop who said, "Oh yeah, it's got to go," and I asked him, what are you going to tell God when he asks you why you relieved an amputee of his garden? And well, I was doing my job. And I go, well, that didn't work out for the Nazis very well. And this is, abbreviated conversation. Uh-oh. I thought he was locked up there. We'll see if he comes back. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, that raid. I wanted to think that the guy was coming from a good place. And, it's hard to really tell. I would hope that by like attacking these people from the right, as I suggested earlier, would lead to some sort of self-realization. I would hope that like at some point that cop goes home, sits down, maybe talks to his wife about what he did for the day and goes, maybe I should rethink this a little bit. Like, I don't know that cops even do that. For the most part, like I think cops don't give a shit about people they crack heads on. And I don't think they think about it later before they go to bed. I think they just crack skulls and keeps cracking skulls. And, I think they really like to prey on poor people. And in this situation, for me, luckily, I'm an amputee and I am a very visual person. I can talk. So if I was able to get a good lawyer, get in front of the media at some point, I would be able to tell a very good story that would not look good on local PD. It doesn't matter if they were, fully within their rights or not, because they were. They had every right to do what they did, except for, the backlash from personal people, backlash from my family. My mother works for the Idaho Supreme Court. She has to send one email and say, hey, look, is this how you guys really want to be, conducting business here? I don't know. I'm filibustering still. I'm busting that filler. We'll see if Joe comes back. We're at 40 minutes, so we did a decent amount. If he doesn't come back, we can end it here. I would hope that anybody listening to this in Idaho can help these guys out as much as they possibly can. You heard them. They need lawyers, guns, and money. The shit has hit the fan here in Idaho. They have policies baked into this state that is making it so hard for these people to do what they're doing. And as I said, they're doing the Lord's work. I mean, if we are able to get decriminalized or, get medical in this state, it's going to improve the lives of everyday people such as me, such as my aunt who has a massive back problem, such as my uncle who was an ex-firefighter from Lahaina and got himself all jacked up during the fire. These are all people who could benefit from medical marijuana, but are instead stuck on opioids. I'm stuck on opioids. They work good, but essentially, like, I would like to have a substitute that is not going to destroy my guts and, possibly get me into a lot of physical ailment. There we go. All right, I filibustered. I think I made it. I made it the entire time rambling.
Right, rambling.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good, man. You're driving. You're good. That's so cool that you're able to do this while you drive.
Now, one of the things you're talking about, the cops, and the cops are a big thing. Reason why is because a lot of the detectives, a lot of the police force, they don't want to be involved in this. They don't want to be involved in the altercations or the interactions. Every interaction a cop has to have over something as minor as possession is a risk.
Yeah.
And it's a risk not just to the officer, but it's a risk to the people they interact with.
And the community.
And the community.
If they do it
Okay,
wrong.
because
You know, if the
if
cops
they
do it wrong,
absolutely.
it costs the
You know,
community.
right? Because if you escalate when you shouldn't, you know, if somebody's in an altered state and, you know, you create a situation where, you know, their anxiety kicks in when they're trying to be calm, you know, when they're in, you end up escalating, and next thing you know, you got a dead someone, you know, or you end up in a situation where now you got someone who's got a criminal record. Okay. Right now, the difference between possession, you know, is a misdemeanor and possession of a felony is, you know, whether you're over 3 ounces or whether you have so much. Now, if you run across the border, you pick up 2 edible candy bars, you are now in possession of a felony in the state of Idaho.
I didn't know that.
Right?
That's crazy.
Don't come back with candy bars. do not come back with the THC infused 1.65 ounce candy bars. 2 of them.
Oh my God.
Because that's a felony.
Yeah, that's horrible.
But the thing is, that we are trying to create a situation where this is no longer a problem, where we are not expecting the officers to police people who have been forced into a situation where they are self-medicating and providing self-care because the pharmaceuticals don't work for them. They can't afford the pharmaceutical. They can't afford the doctor. They do know their THC works for them. They do know their cannabis works for them. They self-medicate because this is the option they have. This is the option they can afford.
Yeah. They put you in such a horrible place. Like I'm on Medicaid right now. And I don't really have a choice because if I go get a job, I have to make enough to afford health insurance, or I can't make enough to where I can't continue on Medicaid. So they put you in this position where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Right. And it's like Medicaid, you know, depending upon what you're doing, you're an amputee.
Yeah.
You got physical therapy. Okay. You go to your physical therapist, you get U8. You lose your Medicaid until you clean up. You can't continue going to physical therapy. You can't get your pain management program monitored, even if you're using your THC for your pain management program. You know, now because you violated your pain management program, there's a number of things you can no longer do until you go through the steps to clean up. And you're looking at 30 days for a cleanup or however long, you know, the different. And the irony is if you talk to a physical therapist, most of the physical therapists here in the Treasure Valley, after they're done UAing you and working you through your physical therapy, they're walking out back behind the clinic and taking a toke.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
you know,
the hypocrisy is just incredible, right?
Providers are higher than they allow you to be because you're on insurance.
I ran into this problem with this doctor. I was, like I said earlier, I was trying to find anything because doctors just didn't want to put me on any meds at all. And I was really going through it. And man, this guy, he didn't want to give me anything. He took me off of gabapentin, which is just why anybody would do that, I don't know, essentially. And I asked him at one point to try this low-dose naltrexone, which is it's a smaller, like, compound med that not a lot of people know about yet that works very well. My mother takes it. And the cop told us, or not the cop, the doctor, same thing in this situation, that that's a placebo and it won't work. So I don't prescribe placebos. And at some point, he was really forcing me down the road to get a spinal cord stimulator, which I did end up getting, and it's just been an absolute fucking nightmare that I don't want to get into. But at one point, the guy told me, I'm not going to give you opioids because they don't actually get rid of the pain. They just make you not care about the pain. And you just go, what's the difference, guy? What is the difference? Like, give me some relief. That is all I'm looking for. Just a little bit of relief.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple weeks later, for some reason, he sent us somebody else's medical records by accident. And we went on and we looked at it because, you know, you're going to look. And this guy that I got he was on so much shit. He had fentanyl coming out of his eyes. And, you know, for me, I'm a risk because I was an opioid addict as a young, 20-year-old. I'd been clean 7 years when I got hurt, but the guy didn't want to take the risk with his insurance.
Jeez.
It's sick.
Right? Oh yeah. But again, that goes back to the difference of the different drugs or the different medications, and what they do for you. You look at opioids. Okay, opioids don't remove the injury; they mask the pain. Okay, you don't know that you're hurting yourself.
Yeah.
When you're on opioids, you're taking opioids for an ACL. Okay, you don't feel no pain. You're up and walking. You're tearing it all the hell up again.
Yeah.
Okay. Your pain management program using THC or cannabis. When you're hurting yourself. It doesn't bother you as much, but So you know enough when you should stop. And that's the difference between using THC as a pain management versus using opioids as a pain management.
And THC does not stop your guts from working, which is just one of the worst parts of opioids, man, is they just lock your guts up and you got a rock in your gut all the time. It's just, I'm always taking laxatives. It's a real nightmare. All right. So
the opioid concept. Anyway, yeah.
I got one more thing we'll go on here and then we'll get you out of here. So I'm going to read you a quote. We do not need to ruin lives and waste taxpayer dollars arresting adults with personal amounts of it on them. Donald Trump. Now,
Donald Trump, yep.
When I heard this, I was like, holy cow. Like, I was not expecting this at all. And I looked into it a little bit, and it seems like a legit move. Where are you with this?
Again, one, I absolutely love it because, as we were talking earlier, 60% of the state of Idaho is going to vote for Trump. Okay, that statement gave 60% of Idahoans permission to support decriminalization of cannabis in the state of Idaho. 60% now have permission to support decriminalization. Okay, this isn't the 30% of Democrats who are already going to vote for it. This isn't, the 10% of the independents. This isn't the 30% of people who can't be bothered to register to vote that insisted on signing the petition that they weren't qualified to sign.
Yeah.
Okay. This is 60% of Idaho voters. Okay. When we need 70% to absolutely clear it in such a way that our state legislature will not null and void it for us. Okay. That 60% of voters, that if we even get half of them to come over to our side to decriminalize cannabis and stop wrecking the lives of young Americans over self-care, stop paying taxes to incarcerate people for coping.
It's a real nightmare. I got arrested for possession of marijuana here in Idaho. My ex-wife was a alcoholic, a severe alcoholic, and at one point she went to a hotel. I don't remember if I kicked her out or if she just went on her own. And somebody from her family called in a wellness check. And me not knowing my rights, like an idiot, I let the cops in. And they saw some weed in plain view. It was like a half a gram. It was barely anything. And after we did the whole wellness check and she wasn't here, and I told them, she's at the hotel. She's at a hotel, probably the closest one, just start calling hotels. You'll find her. They arrested me. They beat me. They tased me and threw me in the back of the car, asked me where my wife's body was without reading me my rights, just really gave it to me. They put a cuff here, and then cuffed me behind my back to my arm And by the time I got to the jail, my ex-wife was already in the process of getting me bailed out. Now, who does
Yeah.
that help? Like, how does that situation help anyone for anything except maybe the bail bondsman? Like, it's just such a joke that, like, you would rip somebody out of their home, beat the hell out of them, and then throw them in a cage for 20 minutes. It's just sick.
Ironically, we had a sheriff once, Sheriff Von Colleen. He found out that filling beds in the county jail got the county sheriff federal funds.
That makes sense.
So the Ada County Sheriff's Office and the Boise Police Department came to an agreement. Anybody and everybody they could arrest and put in a jail bed in the Ada County Jail was going to go into jail long enough to secure the federal funds associated with putting them in that county cell every single time. That's corruption. That is a sheriff operating as unconstitutional as you can get.
Sheriffs have a lot of power. Like, they can do a lot of things.
They do.
Like, a sheriff can essentially decriminalize marijuana with a swipe of a pen. Am I right on that?
They can tell the Ada County sheriffs, they
Yeah.
can tell their county
Stop doing
deputies, stop doing it. Don't do it.
it. So do you guys, are you
know-
guys like able to work with are there any good sheriffs around here?
We usually don't work at the sheriff level. Reason why is because the state legislature loves to punish, people for operating outside of the laws that they want enforced. Okay. Boise didn't want to support the abortion ban. Okay. So the legislature said, well, you're not going to get any tax money from the state then if you do that. Okay. Now the irony is Idaho is a Dillon rule state. And that means that a city council can look at the Idaho laws and say, yeah, we have the power to enforce that, but we're not going to.
Yeah, that happened in Arizona recently where I think it was Maricopa County said no more guns. And then the sheriff was like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Like, screw off.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to say, yeah, we have the power as a city to enforce this law that the legislature gave us the power to enforce. But as a city, we have decided we are not going to enforce that law with our police department. We can do that here in this, but then the legislature likes to come down and say, well, we're going to punish you for it. So it's one of those things, where do you actually draw the line? Where do you create the scenario that says, we're not going to accept this level of human rights violations in our town? How do we create a marijuana sanctuary city? Which is one of those things. Okay. A cannabis sanctuary city in the state of Idaho would be making a statement.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
A
Yeah.
Second Amendment sanctuary city in the state of Idaho is a fucking circle jerk.
Yeah. You're right. You're completely right. Yeah, it's bullshit.
It's bullshit.
It's bullshit. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a joke.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You did something
Yeah.
everybody in the state agrees with anyway.
Yeah, good
Do
for you.
something brave. Do something brave. Stand up to prohibition. Stop making your young kids in your city limits go to jail and go to prison because a bunch of people with big heads in the state legislature thinks it needs to be criminal. Do something brave. But yeah, for the most part, we don't focus on that level because, again, Idaho is conservative. We don't challenge authority just to challenge authority. We want the little steps. We want it tested. We want it proven. We don't want to go through and decriminalize all drugs like Portland did.
Yeah,
that was a mistake.
Yeah, my drunken ex-wife now works for the city of Portland, counseling people on how to not be drunk with their kids or something. you know, good for them.
Yeah.
They deserve each
Yeah.
other. That's the way I looked at it. Last two
Yeah.
questions. Is there going to be anything on the
Okay.
ballot this year, and how can people help?
Okay. No, there's not going to be anything on the ballot this year. Reason why is because we didn't make signatures.
Hmm.
And a lot of that was because one, it was very expensive to print. People didn't want to sign it because it took their rights away. People didn't want to sign it because they didn't understand it. It was too big. It was too difficult, and so no. Best you can do is vote for pro-cannabis candidates. There's a couple out there. Some of them are even Republican. Some of them have accepted that Trump has given them permission to support aspects of cannabis decriminalization in the state of Idaho. So find the candidates that support cannabis. Each one's going to be individual to your own district, your own county, county commissioners. Search them out. And no, we don't have names. I don't have individuals that I can say, oh, Alana Rubel, pro cannabis. Yeah. Her I can say is pro cannabis, but she's one of the few. There's others that support medical programs for veterans. Ben Adams out in Nampa absolutely supports veteran use for medical reasons. We have candidates that support that in the state of Idaho. Find them, ask them about it, vote for them, support them. But yeah, other than that, no, nothing on the ballot.
That permission is huge, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
And people don't realize how big. 8 years ago, you'd be hard pressed to find a conservative that said the Iraq war was bullshit. Now they all say it because Donald Trump gave them permission to do it. And I think that bodes well for us in the future. So thanks again for coming on, man.
So.
It was a pleasure meeting you. Everybody, go check out Kind Idaho. Give them some money. Sign the petitions. These guys need lawyers, guns, and money. The shit's hit the fan. Give them a look. Good night, everyone.
Lawyers, guns, and money. Yeah. And grow your own medicine, folks. Grow your own medicine.
Absolutely. Good night, everyone.